Walt Disney World offers all sorts of different tours, but there are only a couple that take you backstage and behind the scenes. One of those is the Keys to the Kingdom tour at Magic Kingdom. We got to experience it recently, and I can't wait to share with you what it is, where you go, what you see, and whether it's worth it or not. I spent several years working at Walt Disney World, including Magic Kingdom. I'm familiar with backstage, but I couldn't wait to take my daughter on the Keys to the Kingdom tour. Not just to let her see some of the background information that she knew a little bit about, but also because it is the one tour at Magic Kingdom where you get to go backstage and down in the utilidors. I couldn't wait to share some of what I used to do with my daughter and let her kind of get a feel for what it really is that I'm talking about sometimes. The Keys to the Kingdom tour is offered several times a day. You want to book it early. We actually booked ours starting at 8 o'clock on a day that the park opened at 9. So that way we could get in early before the park got flooded with people. Currently here in 2019, they charge $99 for the tour. That, of course, is going to go up in the future. With that $99, because I have an annual pass, it included a discount on it. If you have a Disney Chase Visa, you can also get a discount on it. So we paid about $80 actually for the tour. So it's still a good hefty price. It's less than a full day admission to the park. You've also got to have that in addition to the tour. So please be aware, this doesn't get you in the park for less. This is in addition to your park entry ticket. Once they allowed us into the gates, and we had to wait until just a few minutes before, we headed over to the Grand Expo Hall. This is where the tour groups all meet, where you check in, where you give them your lunch order, because the Keys to the Kingdom tour does include lunch over at Pecos Bills. And then you wait for them to give you a group, to give you a nice little headphone that you get to carry around. Your tour guide gets to speak into the headphone and makes it much easier to hear them, so if you have a little distance, they're not having to yell over the crowd around you. You can expect your tour group to be around 15 to 20 people in size. Once they call your group, you'll head out onto the front steps of the expo hall to meet your tour guide. At the beginning, you're told that you are an honorary cast member, which means they let the wall down on this, so they're very blunt about some of the things that happen. So if you're looking for a way to preserve the magic, you don't want to go on this tour, because they're definitely going to go behind the scenes and tear down some of the walls between what most guests see and what's really going on. But that's also one of the neat things about the tour. And then they're going to give you a little bit of instructions for the tour, including this one that made it a little more difficult to take pictures and video.
So we ask, even when we're in regular area for our guests, which we call on stage, and backstage, we ask for no video or photo recording while on the tour today.
Yeah, that's right. No pictures or video while on the tour. I already knew that for backstage areas, so if you're hoping to see pictures of backstage, sorry, not allowed. Even as a cast member, you're not allowed to take them, because if you're caught, it's an instant termination. As a guest, you're also not supposed to be taking them, so I knew that was coming. So the videos and pictures you're going to see in this video are ones that I took at other times, sometimes on different trips, but to try to fill in a nice picture for you. There will be a couple pictures of the utilidors, but they're not mine. They're actually ones that Disney has published already. After we got the announcements and the preparation, we then begin the actual tour. The beginning of this tour is actually very similar to several other tours that they do offer that will start you off down Main Street. One of the things with Main Street is it is essentially, if you think in terms of a movie, it's the credit roll. And if you look at the windows, you're going to see all of these different names who all have had a role in the park history. So as you slowly make your way down Main Street, you stop several times and talk about some of the different things that are up in the windows, who these people are, the role they played, what the window represents. We also got to see a couple little side things that people might not know about Main Street. A couple little hidden secrets and some extra special things you might not be aware of as you're just walking on down the road. I don't want to give too many things away because I still want to make the tour worth it for you. Lots of nice little tidbits while also looking at the windows, including hearing the story again of how Walt actually managed to finance the purchase of the land and keep it hidden, and why there's this window with all these different companies on there. After we head down Main Street, we kind of took a left turn, and then we start talking about transitions. One of the things you'll notice is there's a lot of different lands in the park, and they've actually done a wonderful job of making the transitions from one land into another feel sort of natural. And so this is one of the subjects that we talk about with the Keys of the Kingdom, is how do they make those transitions almost not noticeable, as opposed to a jarring juxtaposition. Well, the Crystal Palace is actually a fantastic example of that. So we talked about that as we're walking on past, and how the Imagineers made all of that work so that you didn't realize it. And as we finished passing that, we headed on over into Adventureland. Now, the park wasn't officially open yet, so they had a nice rope across, but we got to duck around the rope, and we headed right over to Jungle Cruise, which is going to be our first ride of the day. In fact, we were actually the first ride on Jungle Cruise of the day. We didn't get a normal ride on Jungle Cruise, though. Our tour guide actually takes over, and while the skipper is there driving the boat, the tour guide actually began to talk about how they created the ride. Not just the one at Magic Kingdom, but also the original version at Disneyland. What Walt's vision was, and how it turned out, and why they do some of the things they do, and also hidden secrets, such as how some of the animals and animatronics work. In fact, one thing you may not realize, when you get to the elephant pond, there's always the one elephant sunbathing. It's amazing how this elephant never breaks down. Well, that's because when it does, there's actually 2 other elephants there exactly like it, but you probably didn't realize that just floating by. They've always got an elephant they can rotate in, so if one has to be repaired, there's another one ready to take its place. Also, how they access the panels to work on the animatronics, and why they have the animals that they do on there, and some of the scenes and the gags, and just kind of a neat, really kind of a history and background story of the Jungle Cruise ride. After Jungle Cruise, we headed on around towards the end of Adventureland into Frontierland. We talked a little bit about Splash Mountain and a couple of the other rides, and again, transitions going from Adventureland to Frontierland. And then we took our first steps backstage. We actually went to a place that I really did not ever go to as a cast member. Not only did we step to where they actually, it's called stepping off with the parade, where they start, where they're from backstage and then stepping out onto the main road where everybody can see them. We got to see their staging area for that. But then we actually headed over to the barns and the warehouses where they actually keep all the parade floats. We talked about how they worked and how they get ready and how the performers get ready for the parades. And so you get an understanding of how the performers even get up onto the floats and how some of them work. And yes, we did get actually up close to a few of the floats and got to see some other things back there. Just a really neat behind-the-scenes look at how the parade even functions and gets started and ends and how a lot of that works. Well, believe it or not, at that point, we've actually been almost halfway through the tour. It's 2.5 hours. Then you're getting a little hungry. So then we came back out on stage and headed over to Pico Spills, where we had our lunch. You've got a choice that you make at the beginning of tacos or nachos or burgers or a few other things. They have a nice condiment bar set up there so you can fill up your own stuff. You've got about 30 minutes to be able to eat because there's still a lot more to see and do. There is also one other thing that's kind of neat about this lunch, though. You have a little place setting there with your name on it. That's actually holding your Keys to the Kingdom pin. This isn't a normal trading pin, but it's also one that I don't know why you would want to trade it, because the only way you can get the pin is to actually go on the tour. Nice pin. After a very nice lunch break, you head back onto the tour. You make your way through Frontierland, again talking a little bit about the transitions, and head over to Liberty Square. Liberty Square has a number of things to talk about, including simple things like the coloration of the pavement. Have you ever noticed that brown stripe that runs down the middle of the street in Liberty Square? Well, that's because back at the colonial times, they didn't have indoor bathrooms and running water. And so it kind of represents what people did with their chamber pots at the end of the day. Ew! You also talk about the Liberty Tree and where it came from on property and how they preserved this tree and moved it and actually broke the tree in half as they were moving it and then managed to repair it and still have this incredible tree there. It's got a great story with it. We then also took a lot of time and talked about the Haunted Mansion and the effects that are in it and how they do several of the things and how Pepper's Ghost actually works and how you can actually observe a few of these. And from there we then took a ride on the Haunted Mansion itself. This was actually the first time I'd ever entered through the Chicken's Hall. This is basically an escape route that you can head out if you decide you're too chicken to go on it. But you can also come in. It takes you from the elevators over to the exit. Don't chicken out just so you can see the hall. It's not that big a deal. And then got to ride the ride while looking for these effects. So yes, there's a couple times where we were kind of leaning up a little bit to take a look and see how things worked. Afterwards, again, we got all together, talked a little bit about what we had seen and what we observed. And from there, it was a walk through Fantasyland, talking a little bit about some of what was going on there, the transition from Liberty Square to Fantasyland, and the huge crowds, because it was incredibly crowded that day. The line from Small World was out into the square area, and the line from Peter Pan was all the way to the carousel. So we tried to just get through the crowd as much as we could. And from there, it was the part of the tour that most people, I think, consider the highlight, and that was the utilidors. We entered through a side door. It was actually one that I used a couple times when I used to work there. Got to see a couple of the entertainers coming off stage at the time, and our tour guide said that yes, he did that on purpose. We were actually up at the north end of the utilidors, and surprisingly enough, we walked through probably 2/3 of the utilidors. I was really impressed. We took a whole round around the entertainment end of it, where they have the changing rooms and showers, and the character barn, and the costume warehouse. The Photopass Center is now actually up there. When I used to work for Magic Kingdom, the Photopass space was actually all the way up under Main Street, but now it's actually part of the entertainment wing, so that was kind of neat to see where they had moved it. And we walked out towards the entrance, not down the main hall, where you could see the actual entrance, but where you could look down and see the Disney Learning Center. You could see the Masketeria, which is the cafe that's right down there. And from there, we began the loop around a little bit. We took part of the side loop, and then we headed down the long corridor that goes all the way under the castle and under the moat. Talked about the slope down so that way you can get under the water. Realized that the old Photopass space that used to be under the castle isn't there anymore because they no longer print pictures for Cinderella's Royal Table. But it was kind of fun to be able to point out to my daughter where that used to be. Coming back up under Main Street, we actually took the full loop all the way around under Main Street, which means we got to see the Main Street break room. So I got to point out where the couches were that I slept on to my kid. Walked past the old Photopass space, which is now a merchandise store room that was all locked up, and then got to see a little bit more of the history. It was actually a really neat tour of the utilidors. We talked about what the different tubes were and how the recycling program worked and the trash program. Part of that was actually over back at Splash Mountain as well when we did that part. But you got a really good feel for how these work. You also got a good idea of the smells and the looks that come along with the utilidors. It's not as bad as some people think, but it's also not totally pristine. People got to see a Pargo, which is essentially a golf cart, driving around in them, and how they did some of the maintenance work and people got around. So it's a really neat look. We probably spent about an hour going through the utilidors. So it's a really good look at those. I wish I could show you pictures, but yeah, of course, that's one of the big no-nos. No pictures underground. And after you're done with the utilidors, you come back up behind Main Street, get a look at where the old bistro used to be, which is now a walkway. It was neat to see that they'd actually put a new bistro area behind one of the Tomorrowland buildings for cast members. And then you're back out on Main Street and heading out for the day. A really neat tour. If you really want to know how some of the inner workings of the park go and how they do a lot of the things that they do and how the entertainment works and some of the utilities and things, it gives you a great look at some of the operations of the park behind the scenes. As they say, they treat you as an honorary cast member, so they are going to talk about things on the tour that you would never talk about with the guests otherwise. They talk about things on the tour that I won't talk about on my channel because I want to preserve the magic. But if you really want to know about some of the behind the scenes things, this is the tour to go on. And when you're backstage, at least with our tour guide, it was basically a feel free to ask any question you want and we will answer it any way we can. So you really got to talk about several things that there's no way Disney would even talk about publicly per se, which is one of the other reasons that you're not allowed to videotape while you're on the tour, because they don't want those things out with the public breaking the magic. They'll talk about it on the tour and backstage, but they don't want it out there. And our tour guide was awesome. He had so much information about so many different things in the park. He had actually worked at Animal Kingdom and then come over to Magic Kingdom and had done a number of different things. And he was fantastic, but all the tour guides are going to know their stuff as well. A few things to be aware of with the tour. There is a lot of walking. So if you have a hard time walking long distances, you're going to have a hard time with the tour. There are several spots where you need to go up and down stairs, in particular with the utilidors. Not every utilidor entrance has elevators available. So accessibility that way may be an issue. So if you have a hard time walking a long distance, this may not be the tour for you, because it is basically 4 hours of straight walking, just about, with the extra hour for your lunch and the couple rides and a couple stops that you make. It is also age restricted. I believe you have to be at least 16 to go on the tour. Part of that, I'm sure, is for insurance reasons because you're going backstage where only employees or cast members are allowed. So that has an age restriction on it for safety reasons. As well as the fact that they don't want some 5-year-old walking down and seeing an entertainer in a state that would probably be uncomfortable for the kid. Is it worth it? In my mind, yes. Now, we went with annual passes, so it did cost less, and we didn't have to pay our way in. If you are a Disney nut or a theme park nut and you want to get a behind-the-scenes look, it's a fantastic tour. If you're going on a budget and you're tight on funds, well, this is probably not going to be something you can afford, and it is going to take 5 hours of your day up for you. So if you're wanting to have a day where you're hitting every ride as fast as you can, that's not the day to take a tour. But if you're wanting to take some time out of your day and to learn and observe, I loved it. I loved seeing some of my old haunts from when I worked there. I love being able to show them to my daughter and say, hey, this is where I checked in. Here's where I used to eat lunch. Here's where I slept on the couch those couple times I didn't come home because of really long hours. Here's where I used to have to work. And that was a lot of fun for me. And she did tell me she enjoyed it. I hope I didn't drive her too much with the dad tales. For me, it really, in a lot of ways, it felt like I was coming home. So that was a really special thing. That's kind of the Keys to the Kingdom tour in a nutshell. Includes lunch, includes a couple rides, includes going behind the scenes where you get to see the utilidors and the parades. Now, this tour does change. If you took it a year and a half ago, it's very likely different now in some ways, and it will constantly change again depending upon what they're doing in the park. So everything that I said is subject to change at any point on the tour. So please, if you take the tour a year after I took it and said, hey, we didn't do that and you said we were going to. Well, it's because the tours do evolve and change. But I absolutely loved it. I wouldn't mind doing it again with some other people who had never seen it. The biggest problem I had sometimes was keeping my mouth shut because the tour guide was talking about things that I knew about, and I'm like, oh, I want to chime in and add to it. It's his show, not mine. So lots of fun. So that's the Keys to the Kingdom tour. Have you been on the Keys to the Kingdom tour yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. What about other tours that you've been on? Be sure to share your thoughts and feelings below as well. I want to give a huge thank you to Larry Potter for helping sponsor and cover the cost of the tour for us, as well as my other patrons for helping to make this happen. They are the ones that provided the funds and the resources to be able to allow this whole trip to happen, as well as to be able to take the tour, and I am so incredibly grateful to them. If you want to know more about Patreon and supporting me, be sure to check the links below. There's all sorts of information there. I also want to give a shout out to my two newest patrons, Joseph Jenkins and Rich Walker. Thank you so much for signing on for your support. If you want to know more about Patreon and supporting me, be sure to look in the description below. There's all sorts of links there to not just Patreon, but my Facebook fan pages, the groups, the Discord, the Reddit, merchandise. If you want to know my gear that I use, there's links to that down there, as well as some people wanting to know my shopping and wish list, so it's in the description as well. Thank you so much to everybody for watching. Thank you to all my subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit the button already. Thank you so much. We got to experience it recently, and here's our review of what you do, what you see, and whether you want to do. Okay, muff that all up. Oh, it's a different thing. Here, sitting here looking, and all of a sudden I see this cord dangling off my camera. Nothing. You can expect around 15 to 20 different people. 20 different people, yeah, because they're not going to be 15 of the same people. You'll get to meet your tour guide once they call you. I'm just stuttering all over the place. So have you... that should do it. Blah, 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 blah. If you want to know whenever I have a new video out, well, hey, make sure you hit that button right there and subscribe. If you want to see another video right now, well, I've got a great one right here for you. And if you want to be like these wonderful people here and help support me financially on Patreon, well, check out that link right there and it'll take you to it. Thanks so much and God bless.